Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. My name is Ben, and today I'm joined by Coach Sawyer, as you know from previous episodes. But today we also have a special guest, Mike the Vegan. So, Mike is a vegan science writer that covers a variety of topics from the health effects of a vegan diet and the environmental impact of eating animal products to the sociological phenomenon of the casual animal exploitation. So based in the US, he regularly tackles debunking the myths that perpetuate harmful dietary and lifestyle behaviors, all with a drop of humor that only he thinks is funny. But I must push back on that, Mike, because I've been watching your videos for a few years now, and I feel like you do a really great job of balancing the entertainment with education. I think your edits are really well timed and humorous. So I have been watching your videos for quite some time and really enjoy that kind of blend. And I know Sawyer has as well. So I first and foremost just want to say thank you so much for giving us your time today to come on to the podcast and talk shop.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Maybe I need to change it to only me and two other people think is sort of funny.
Yeah, just
Two
keep
people
adding
in the
to
room
that
with
number.
us.
Dude, I actually laugh out loud watching your videos sometimes, and that's something that takes a lot for me to do. Like if I'm alone and you're laughing, like that's when you know somebody's funny. So I gotta
Nice.
say,
Okay, I
man,
appreciate that. I'll try to add more
yeah,
for you in the future. Sometimes I just get so caught up in like getting the information out that I like forget to just like have a good time and put jokes in there. And then someone comments like, "Where are the jokes in this video?" Or like sometimes the topic is really serious and I'm like, I don't know if I can just like throw too many jokes in here. But yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm happy you
that
like
makes
it.
sense. No, you got to do it when it feels organic, right? If you force it too much, it won't. It probably won't come
Mhm.
across as well anyway.
But
So,
sometimes I do have to do the weird, like, when I like Photoshop my face into like a worm or
mhm.
something, like
Yeah,
RFK's
yeah,
brain worm. Like sometimes those are also funny too, because I'm doing it imagining that I'm gonna be the brain worm later. It's like I can't see what you
yeah,
see. So it's like
yeah.
it's goofy, but it's fun.
That's so funny. Yeah, I love that one. That one cracked me up. Actually, that
Oh
was
yeah,
probably the most
that's low
recent
hanging
good
fruit. The
laugh I
brain
had.
worm's low hanging. Yeah.
So, Mike, I think before we get into the topics for today, we like to just start the podcast by having a little bit of just casual chit chat. Before we got on, you had mentioned you're like, "Hey, I got my oatmeal here. You might be eating that kind
I
of
might take a
throughout
couple bites,
the
but I'm
podcast."
not like
Yeah,
starving. It's probably
there
the
we go.
ugliest bowl of oatmeal I have because I just threw it together. But I got a
Well,
bunch of
hey, I was
blueberries in
just,
here.
I
I was
was
gonna
saying,
say where the berries at. There it
They're
is.
high. The whole bottom is covered in blueberries. I got cinnamon on top, and normally I would put even more in, but I'm like, I'll just throw it together.
but
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, we as the coaches, like, we often get on our podcast, and we're eating while we're talking, doing things, and I think people always kind of are interested to see, what we have to eat in our group, and they're curious about, what that looks like. And I feel like also you must have gotten, I'm guessing you've probably gotten a lot of requests for like full day of eating videos, like over time,
Yeah.
because people love that. Why do you think people like those things so much?
I
Especially like
think
with
it's because
content
it's
creators.
just so like concrete in like what are you actually putting in your body? People are just abstractly talking about it. And I haven't done it in a while. I need to do it, especially because I've been eating even healthier lately than normal. But yeah, it's just the idea of like how are they actually consuming food? What are they actually preparing? How hard is it to prepare it? How expensive does it seem? There's just so many questions people have about people's diets. It's like, can I accomplish that? Or is it so complicated that I can just say, no, I could never eat like that and just like throw my hands up like some people watch just to do that? Or really,
Mm,
that genre of video kind of started from just like there'd be like a really fit, hot, attractive girl that people were trying to like a lot of people were trying to be like or be skinny like. That's like back in the Freely days, sort of. And then people were like, what do you eat so I can look like you kind of vibes, like completely just superficial, unfortunately. And then now we have probably a more healthy view of that of like, how can I be healthy like you? Or how can I be ripped like you is probably what, it's motivating a few of these. And so people haven't been requesting it that much lately of me. They probably can just look back to my older videos because I haven't really changed that much. But yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's
I was gonna say that is that like it seems like it's hard to come up with ideas that are like sexy or exciting enough in our spaces because we're giving
Mhm.
advice that's pretty like I don't know, at least compared to the rest of the industry that's like trying to push like these kind of I don't know cutting edge like narratives about like what could be killing you or like what you know what I mean and we're having to keep up with like keep eating your oatmeal and you know what I mean so it's just
Yep.
kind of like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a tricky balance but I think you do a good job of like keeping the content interesting and like current event relevant but like still reminding people of like hey the basics do the work like they're the things that are moving the the ball downhill or uphill
Yeah,
I
and I
should
mean, I could be
say.
more creative about it. I mean, like I'm just eating my oatmeal bowl with very like rotating fruit and nuts and berries, but there's way more you can do. Like I'm working on a Mediterranean like Mike's Mediterranean cookbook or something like that. Not exactly sure.
Mm.
And I'm trying to like reinvent a few things that I haven't seen before. So we'll see how that goes. But in general, like there's so many more things. Like I could be going like half buckwheat or something and still be healthy. Like I should probably be switching it up a little bit so people don't go insane. But my main meals also are way more varied than my breakfast. My breakfast is just like, okay, oatmeal. Or actually, I have been doing like half and half oatmeal rye flakes, which I get from my local health food store, which looks a little bit different and tastes a little bit different, but it's like more or less the same thing. Like it looks like why is there some slightly darker oatmeal in my oatmeal? Like that's not going to get any prizes for cooking ingenuity or anything like that. But yeah, there's always a new diet. It's like, oh, the new carnivore diet, blah, blah, blah. Like the newest thing that's going to like reverse all disease, even though it doesn't have science. It's like, if we're sticking to the science, like the food isn't going to change that much, unfortunately.
I have to vote that you name it the Mike's Magical Mediterranean Meals so that it's just all M's.
M.
Just
then it'll
putting
just have
that in.
M's everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
exactly. And it's like,
I'll put that on the list.
too. It's like yummy. So
Good.
just putting it out there. Yeah.
I should use that slogan. Good. I don't think that one
There you
is
go. I don't think
taken
that's
by
been
any
used.
large corporations.
Well, now you'll have to give 5% of kickbacks to Vegan Proteins here after.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, this is what you guys are actually just
that's how we get it.
entrapping me with ideas. Yeah, you just bring people on here.
Mike, I'm curious. So, like, what you mentioned, you've been really trying to lean into cooking healthy meals for yourself recently. What keeps you kind of like motivated or inspired to continue doing that? Because I think for a lot of people, it's like they'll have these streaks where for maybe a couple weeks or a couple months, they get really, they're like, I'm going to, change everything I'm eating. I'm going to focus on, having all these kind of 1%ers. What for you is like that driving factor that, when you wake up each day, you're like, I'm going to make this choice instead of that choice?
It's a hard one. I feel like for me, it's just a driving like, hey, let's try to not get disease as much. I mean, like I've talked about before, part of my like, and I realized later it was like subconscious health journey was having like living with my grandma who had Alzheimer's pretty brutally. That was kind of a brutal story. And so I'm just like, let's change my diet to not get Alzheimer's. And I read the China study. There was like a section about brain health in there if we're going to like get to my origin story. And so that's definitely part of it. Another one is just like keeping things down. Like my partner, her cholesterol to just straight up out her. Genetically, for whatever reason, her cholesterol is just so much more sensitive to like any fat, plant-based saturated fat. Of course, animal fat would be way higher. And so she's like the one who's also pushing me to eat way healthier. And so if she does not eat like really well, her cholesterol will go higher than your average vegan by far. And so it's like, okay, let's, make sure we're getting a lot of fiber, whole foods, getting the like coconut oil-y products and things like that out as much as possible for her. And then it's like, okay, I have to eat like you more or less, even though my cholesterol is really low because I luckily have genetically lower cholesterol even. And so, yeah, I will eat some extra little, like I have like these little almond puddings that she won't eat. Like that's an example of like how our diet differs. But yeah.
So it sounds like it's like a team effort. So first of all, you have a partner who's like on board with you. And then you've also got some like metrics that you're using to kind of keep you in the lines a little bit. You're like, oh, that's getting a little more than I like. And I think that's something we talk about a lot with clients is like, hey, if you have some things you're paying attention to and you don't catastrophize about, like it can really actually help keep you in line. And I don't think it's bad to kind of put some parameters on yourself for like, hey, I'm going to try to color in these lines. So long as it's not like a tightrope, right? If you're like, if this goes 1 degree off, I'm freaking out and I'm jumping ship. But I think it's cool how you mentioned that. Like, hey, I'm looking at my cholesterol, or she's looking at her cholesterol, so that makes us better. And then I'm looking at my brain health and vascular health, that makes us better. That's cool.
And another one is the scale, the like body analyzer scale I have. If I see things kind of drifting, like if I'm traveling and I'm not working out, I'll see like my body fat go up a little bit and I'll feel it go up a little bit. And then I'll get back home and I'll be like on that seeing, because it shows body fat and muscle. And I'll try to like do what I can to do a little bit of recomp and like work out harder or exercise more and like not eat as much like processed foods, etc. And usually I'm able to correct myself. So
I like that. Yeah, because it's so easy. I mean, I've worked with so many people who are like, I didn't even realize how bad it was getting. And then I looked at a picture of myself, 4 months, 6 months later, and I was like, whoa, it got that bad. And I'm like, yeah, that's why it's good to pay attention to stuff before it gets like, it starts to depress you how far it's gone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like we weren't using that scale for a little bit. And then I was like, oh, crap. Yeah, I've definitely been letting too many processed foods slip in. And it was like, it even has like visceral fat, which is still really low, but it like went up slightly. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, it's time to just do all this. Like for me, my weekly routine is like sports 3 or 4 times a week, depending on the sport, and then like going to do like some workouts in between that. Not that I'm like super jacked or anything, but yeah, just I
That's
try to get
awesome.
good cardio in. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
What sports do you like to play, Mike?
My best cardio sport right now is ultimate frisbee because when we're playing, yeah, you play it, and we
You're
play it
talking to
like,
the king.
oh, nice, heck yeah, dude, yeah. When it's like, especially when it's hot out, the cardio is insane. We're just sprinting up and down a field constantly, especially because I'm usually the one who's like down in the end zone, which I should, pace myself a little bit. That, and then I do play like men's softball twice a week actually, because there's been really good numbers for that. And then I play street hockey, which is like kind of a goofy version.
Whoa,
It's like you just have your shoes and a ball and you
Mhm.
play. And that's
That's
decent
cool.
cardio. So it's like not as good cardio as ultimate frisbee, but way better than softball, where you're like sitting there.
Mhm.
Like the term Charlie horse came from baseball because people would just sit and run. There's a guy named Charlie who would like pull muscles all the time and get cramps because he was just sitting so long. And so that's not the best cardio, but you get sprint. You do sprint in that, which is good.
Mhm.
No, I think that's great. I think it's like finding something that is enjoyable for you when it comes to exercise or activity is so big for the majority of people. And it isn't to say that it always has to be enjoyable. Like, I think there's certain people where it's like, okay, maybe going to the gym and lifting weights is more like brushing my teeth for that person because it's not something that they love, but it's something that they know is good for them and that they should be doing. Or like eating broccoli. Maybe broccoli is a vegetable they don't like, but maybe they can find some vegetables that they do like, and that can kind of be a supplement to that. And like you were getting at, I don't think there has to be one reason why we make some of these changes. There can be multiple reasons. It can be for health reasons. It can be for athletic performance. It can be for aesthetics. And there's nothing wrong with having a couple of these different motivators to remind you of why you're doing the things that you're doing on a daily basis. And it doesn't all have to be discipline and staying on track. Like it can be fun too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or just like looking good for the animals. I love when
Yeah.
people are
Walking
super vain and they're
billboard.
like, for the animals. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Just walking. Yeah. Yeah. Walking billboard. That is true. That is very true. Vegans, I'm really all about vegans like being healthy and looking healthy. And
Yeah.
it's hard because people do age. And when a vegan just ages, it's like, that's got to be from a lack of animal protein or some deterioration or something. And it's like, no, like I love like the vegan zombie got a comment that he posted and he's been vegan for like 20 years. And someone's like, my gosh, you look like you're 30. He's like, thanks, I'm 40 or 45 or something like that. Like people are trying to say he looks old and it's like, no. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's like, it's kind of a wild thing. But yeah. And
Yeah.
it's
So
also good to be a vegan in these sports locally too, I was going to
mm,
say,
Very
and like
true.
be decent, hit some home run. Like definitely hit like the other day, actually yesterday, I hit a home run and it's like, I try to hit a home run every single time we play. And like,
Yeah.
maybe I'm not trying to like toot my own horn or anything, but like maybe there's like 2 or 3 guys that are hitting a home run in any given game. And it's like, oh, that's the vegan guy that just hit the home run. And then there's another vegan guy that also hits the home runs there. And it's like, maybe that's clicking a
That's
little
cool.
bit for people that like, there's, a couple agile vegans that are also hitting home runs. And it's like, I don't maybe need to slam down me as much. Not that those guys are probably even noticing, but anyway.
Hard to
would
say,
you?
but
Yeah,
you're putting your
and
best
would
foot
you?
forward, which is
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead,
for
Ben.
sure.
No, I was just gonna say, Mike, you were talking about just then, like, well, I'm trying, I want to help people be, the best advocates that they can be, for veganism. Is that kind of one of the reasons that you got into creating content? Like, how did this all start for you? Like, what made you want to be a science communicator?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was I was just really hesitant to go vegan initially. Like, I had my partner who was like, "Oh yeah, it's vegan's good, being healthy." I was like, "Yeah, but don't you need a little bit of animal protein? Like, I'm gonna wither away if I don't get any animal protein." Blah blah blah. And so I ended up looking at all the studies to try to like just see what was up, if I was right or if I was wrong, and then realizing more and more that I was wrong, and then finally changing my opinion. And then anytime someone would talk about it, I'd be like, "Oh well, I read this study and." Talked about how vegans had lower levels of this disease or whatever. And so people were like, oh, maybe you should just like make a quick video of what you said so you don't have to say it over and over again, or so I can send it to somebody if a vegan's listening. And so that combined with a really pseudoscientific YouTube climate at the time in 2015, it was kind of like fruitarian dominated, interesting period. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go in and only cite science behind every like major claim that I'm making. And
Yeah.
that yeah, that was how I started. And no one
I,
watched for the
I
first
didn't
few
realize you
videos. And
started
then,
it. Yeah, you started in 2015 because I went vegan in
Mhm.
2016, and I remember the feeling of like I don't know anybody who's doing this who looks like I want to look, who who thinks like I think. And I think one thing I really appreciated about your channel was that it didn't feel hyperbolic. It felt like everything you were saying was you could back it up and you weren't trying to sensationalize veganism in the same way that a lot of people were at that time. So I think that's a testament to like why you've lasted longer than a lot of these people have and a lot of their influence has.
Possible, yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah, and
really
that's what I was
appreciate
saying
the
is
way
like,
you communicate. Yeah.
thanks. I appreciate that a lot as well. And so I remember thinking, yeah, there's channels that like burn bright and then burn out. Like there was some like vegan, I think there was even this guy named the Vegan Drama, and he would just go and just talk crap about vegans. He was getting like as many views as me, and maybe even more in some cases. And it was like, man, I'm putting all of this work in. Cited 20 studies in that video, and this guy just comes on and says like, just makes up stuff, like slanderous stuff a lot of the time. And it was like doing so well. And I was like, this guy's definitely it's just gonna burn out, burn a little brighter in terms of views and stuff, but it's not gonna last. Like that mentality can't last. And like people will catch on eventually that he's just like not an accurate source of information as well. And so
Yeah.
that's been my goal, is to just be like a steady sort of bastion of vegan information.
Yeah. No, I think you have achieved that. And I think that was really wise of you to see that early on, because it's very tempting to go with what feels like, well, this is the way the industry works, I guess, or the platform works. I have to do that,
Mhm.
and lean into it. But
Yeah, and
it
so I
just
have my
doesn't.
cycle of like maybe 1 in 4 videos, I'll try to mention like a celebrity or a person, and it's just so obvious that that's what people want to watch. Like if you just look back, it's like Billie Eilish video, 50 or 70,000 views. Like
Mhm.
a new vegan study came out, like 10,000 views maybe, and then it's like, oh, Gaz Oakley no longer vegan, 70,000 views. New oral health study, no one watches it. Like it's like so
Mm,
obvious that people want there to be some like social story as well, which I
mhm,
should be a
mhm,
little bit better on. There's more like response videos that I should be doing
mm.
to people in general, and like tying more people in. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's always a
it's
balance,
painful.
right? You have to be making what you find interesting, but also what's going to keep people coming to you for information, because you are at some level competing with these more sensationalized, more like hyperbolic people. And so you have to be like, hey, I could talk about that stuff too, but here's what really matters when we're talking about this stuff. So it's like,
Yeah, all the time.
the
And
old
I'm like,
bait and
look, if I
switch.
can, yes, yeah, the old bait and switch, the clickbait stuff, but
Yeah.
clickbait and switch. If I can get a video that has only 10,000 views, but actually help somebody, like 3 or 4 people reverse a disease and like not
Hmm.
die, like that's a huge part of my mission, obviously. And sometimes you get both.
Hmm.
Like I had my erectile dysfunction video, which I think has 1 million views. And I've had
Hmm.
multiple dudes come up to me in real life and be like, hey, I watched that video and changed my diet and like reversed my erectile dysfunction. And I'm
Wow.
like, bro, that's crazy.
That's
Like,
cool.
you don't even think when you're making those
Probably
videos, you
save
don't
some
think anyone's
marriages.
gonna like actually do it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it saved yeah, who knows all the marriages I saved. People that aren't like shameless enough to come up to you and be like, my D stopped working and you fixed it for me, bro. And I'm like, I don't know. There's probably people who are like thinking it, or like maybe other people helped them out, like maybe Gregor or something, and they're not gonna
Yeah.
say it because it like they have to admit that it
Hmm.
wasn't working in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah,
So anyway.
it's almost like those videos that are more kind of attention grabbing. Like those are the videos that maybe for people who are kind of interested in the science or interested in the research, but they might not be inclined enough to stick around unless they're getting a little bit of that like, ooh, like
Yeah.
what's the gossip here? What's the drama here? So it's almost
Juice.
like you're kind of, yeah, you're retaining, or, you're bringing new people into your world. And then maybe they over time start to be, you know what, actually the science is a little bit more interesting to me. Let me pay attention to, my health, or let me learn a little bit more about this. So I feel like, yeah, like what you were saying, what Sawyer was saying, it kind of has to be this balance. Because if you only make drama videos, then I'd imagine that would probably kind of, you'd be like, why am I doing this? Am I really helping people? What's the point of this? You might burn out, like you were kind of mentioning earlier on. So it has to be like, striking that balance between what you want to make and what, playing the game, so to speak, with social media.
Yeah, it's really hard, and it is something to be said too that like those can be fun in moderation. And yeah, it's like there's an attention economy right now that is so unbalanced, where it's like the fact that I'm not making more short form content is also disastrous. Like I need to be making more short term content, but it's like the people who are coming off of like highly addictive, rapid fire, short term content, short form content, and then for me to expect them to watch like a 20-minute science video about a topic that like I think is kind of important, but like most people aren't even that interested in, is like it's a really big ask. And so I'm just happy
Mm.
that anybody's still watching it all at this point.
I mean, at the same time too, though, like if you do and you do a really thorough job of speaking on a particular issue that needs kind of that nuance, that needs that amount of time, you have somebody who doesn't watch these videos regularly, but, is now gets a diagnosis or has a really big scare or something. Those are the videos that are going to affect them the most because they're like, I want to learn as much as I can about this thing. So you might not cast as wide a net, but the people that it does capture with those kind of videos it's going to really hit hard because they're really looking for that thing. They want to soak up as much as they can. So
that's the goal
I
too.
appreciate
But then
those videos too.
yeah, that's my goal, and that's why I'm trying to cover every major disease that's connected here and there, like piecemeal. Like I'll do PCOS and
Mhm.
stuff, and that one was one that didn't get a lot of views at first, but then a lot of people were like, "Oh, thank you for even talking about this. Most people aren't talking about this." But then I'll be like, "Okay, I'm gonna do a screw worm video because there's like a screw worm invasion into the southern U.S. and like they cut all the funding for the screw worm monitoring, and like that's a big issue, and it's gonna cause so much animal suffering." Then it's like no one really wants to care about that. Like it's gross. It's not a health issue. It's an animal and it's an environmental issue. It's an animal issue. It's even a political issue as well. But it's still like, do you want to watch a 10-minute screwworm video when you could just go and like scroll on like Instagram baddies or something? Like I don't think most people are gonna click the screwworm video, but I think at least 10,000 people did, and that's good. Maybe there's going to be more awareness, a little bit more awareness, although it's been the news anyway. But the connection of just like it to animals as well. I mean, it's literally like a bot fly that eats animal flesh as the little worm larva state, and like we
That's
cut
crazy.
like the Doge cut $15 million screwworm monitoring program as it was creeping north through Latin America to our borders, and now it's here.
Oh my
So
God.
we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you never know, right? Like, do you ever have it happen? I've heard this before where it's like you made a video a while ago, it didn't get that many views when you first made it, but then like the topic becomes relevant and a certain video begins to pick up steam. Has that sort of thing ever happened? Because it's like, yeah, maybe in the time that you made it, it didn't really, pick up, but then for whatever reason that topic becomes popular and now people are seeing those
A
videos.
funny one, which sort of fits that bill, was back in the day, YouTube used to give you a consultant. I sat down with my consultant and he was like, "Hey, let's make a video that's just going to get you views just for fun, just to see if it'll do it." And so I'm like, "All right, I'm going to do a cannabis science video." And I posted that video and I got less views than my average video for that first 24 hours, to the point where I was like, "Oh, well, it's a flop." And then I checked back on it and I realized, oh my gosh, it's like approaching 1 million views. And so that was one of my videos that's broken 1 million views, or around 1 million views, that like it was meant to get views, but it looked like it was going to flop. And so it was like, that was kind of interesting. And there are ones that grow, and then there's just weird things. Like I did like a grounding mat video talking about like, are they real, or like what's really going on with grounding? And the main kind of message was like, hey, this is probably bogus. And yet for some reason that the money from that video, like the turnover, like everyone clicked on that video and bought a grounding mat because that video has made more money than like any of my other videos, which makes me really annoyed because
Yeah.
it does, and that doesn't even have that as many views as other videos. But if I look at like top performing revenue videos, it's like, what? Anyway, so that shows that like the wellness industry itself is larger than larger than the pharmaceutical industry. But that also includes the exercise industry as well. Like wellness is not just supplements, but like it just shows the wellness industry is highly profitable, and that's a lot of why we get not even just these products, but also these diets being pushed so hard. Like the carnivore industry, which is tied into the meat industry, has a huge amount of like astroturfing and pushing from the outside, like, of it growing. Like there's like, it didn't just grow organically. Let's just say that.
Right.
It wasn't free range.
What keeps you like going when there is so much misinformation, or I would say even disinformation out there? Like, does it ever feel kind of like pointless trying to debunk it all? Because there's always people who are like, going to be grifters and are trying to take advantage of people and get their money. Or maybe in some cases they genuinely believe the messaging, but they've just like have a fundamental understanding of how science research, is carried out, or interpreting research or statistics. Like, do you ever have days where it feels like, man, like it's impossible there's some like law or rule where it's like the amount of effort that it takes to refute bullshit is like greater than the amount that I forget the name of that, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is an uphill battle. And like my debunk videos are one of my main genres of video. Like if you type in Mike the Vegan, I think it autofills debunk or something like that. And so people are looking to me for that. And it's so clear that like my debunk debunking videos are almost never going to get 10% of the views of the original one. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they get, like, if there's somebody making some really bogus claims and not getting a ton of views, like sometimes I'll get like roughly the same amount of views as kind of like the entertainment of how ridiculous that thing that they said was. But in general, yeah, I mean, this sensational stuff is just almost like psychologically addicting. And it's, so I think it's like that, you get that dopamine hit of like, they hear, oh, well, cholesterol is actually good for you. The higher the cholesterol, the better, as one of those carnivore doctors just said that. I think maybe Happy Healthy Vegan Ryan responded to that. I should probably check into it and respond to that. But it's like that is just like has a nice little dopamine spike for the person that really wants to hear it. And that person is 95% of the population.
I want to touch on something that you were mentioning when you were talking about starting your YouTube channel, which is these people who, actually thinking on the opposite side of the spectrum. Let's go back to people who are vegan or are plant-based, but the views or the stances that they take are perhaps a little out there, a little extreme.
This is a huge
And
issue.
I've noticed the trend over time is I think a lot of the people who stop being vegan are people who fall into this camp of taking a very extreme approach to it. So is this something that you've observed after doing a lot of these like ex-vegan videos over time? Like what kind of trends are you picking up on when you're
Well, I
making these
do have
videos?
my little ex-vegan bingo board that I made, and that's pretty much on there of diet trend followers. One of the boxes on my ex-vegan one. Just not listening to science, I think, is one. I can't remember exactly how I worded it, but yeah, it's a big problem. And I have done in the past, like one of my videos that actually did all right was debunking vegan myths. And one of them was talking about how like dairy leaches acid from your bones, or because it's acidic, leaches minerals from your bones. Like that's just, there's no science behind that. Like our body will just like buffer calcium unless, I mean, maybe there's a situation where like if you're just drinking like hydrochloric acid water for months and not eating food, like, yeah. But if you're consuming food in any reasonable amount, like dairy and the protein, it was also like the logic. It was like dairy has protein, which is acidic. Amino acids are acids. Therefore, it's leaching minerals from your body. It's like, oh, well, so that means if you take a vegan protein powder, you're leaching that then it'd be acidic on your body and like it would leach. Like the logic didn't make any sense at all. And so I did a video on that. It's like we have enough like valid points to talk about there. And then there's also like the refuting. That's been a big part from the beginning, is refuting the idea that you shouldn't take B12 or that you don't need to take B12, which, whether you believe that we were able to get it through non-animal sources prehistorically somehow through water or whatever, like it's completely irrelevant. Like nowadays you have to take a B12 supplement or be consistently eating fortified foods. And so we had, like, for example, I think I made a video responding to Fully Raw Christina, who's a raw foodist, who said in the past that you didn't need to take it. And then she switched her position. I made a video basically in a friendly way calling her out, being like, hey, actually, we really do need to take this, and then going through the science on it. And then she changed her viewpoint at some point. And then a couple years later, she messaged me, hey, I'm getting a lot of hate from this video that you made, which had like 400,000 views. And so I just took that video down because I was like, okay, this is no longer relevant. The information was still good, but it was like, in a way, it was almost like slanderous against her if people were interpreting it wrong. So yeah. So there's times where it's like, there's still a lot of vegan myths out there that are pro vegan that still need to be like toned down.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you do that, because I remember when I first went vegan and I was kind of getting a lot of information that was very like hyperbolic, or like, going vegan is going to solve every life problem you've ever had.
Yeah.
I think it's really problematic, because you start to see through that eventually, because it's not like you're not human and are you still going to have problems and health problems and whatever if you go vegan. So I really do like the fact that you provide that like sobering kind of grounded view based in the science. And I think that's why it's, the people who follow that tend to stay vegan. One thing I've noticed, and I'm wondering if you have as well, is it seems like a lot of the theories that come out and the new diets and things like that are usually based in like mechanistic understandings, like very rudimentary, sometimes mechanistic understandings of how foods interact and things like that. And it seems like to me that there are like these smart people who get way too zoomed in on like mechanisms and say, this happens when, this happens in a petri dish, therefore, and they create a whole like theory around it. So I feel like one thing you do really well in your content is you like extrapolate that. You say, hey, like observational data matters, human trials matter. Like we can't just zoom in like that. And I feel like that's something I've learned from you. So I appreciate.
That's such a good thing. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Such a good example of that is like the Dave Asprey biohacking people. Well, like they'll hear
Mm.
about something, they'll be like, oh, well, like red light blocking is good for, or red light glasses, blue light blocking is good for like circadian rhythm to have it,
Mhm.
which of course you'd want that at night. And so they just wear the glasses like seemingly all the time during the day, which would then dampen like the blue light exposure that you need to like maintain circadian rhythm. And that's
Mhm.
one example. The other example would be like he's really pro saturated fat. This guy is Dave Asprey is like
Mhm.
pretty sure he's keto, or at least in and out of keto. Very, very anti-vegan. I think he was saying that one of the people that was like oatmeal is like the worst food ever because
Yeah.
your glycemic, you could get like a glycemic spike. And it's like, well, have you
Yeah.
seen the studies on like like reversing diabetes with oatmeal? Like, and just how
Mhm.
oatmeal is just consistently associated with like lower disease, lower heart disease, lower diabetes, even, which is what he's concerned about, and just on and on
Mhm.
and on. It's like he sees that one mechanism and then just gets tunnel vision and already has
Mhm.
his biases of like anything that is carbs is bad, anything that like most plant-based foods are bad, and like
Mhm.
meat and dairy and animal fat is great. And so it's like, oh, he'll hear like one thing, like, oh, maybe there's one, you take one of the like fats that's in dairy and you put it, you isolate it and you like give it to some rats and it like helps. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, now you're ignoring all of the other things about it. You're ignoring the IGF-1 acne cancer connection, all the other like cholesterol raising of the whole fat like together. Like it's just,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. You hit the nail on the head with that.
We just
Yeah. No, I'm glad you see that.
interviewed Cyrus. Sorry.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I was just gonna say we just interviewed Cyrus Kambata for of Mastering Diabetes last week on the podcast, and he was touching on this a little bit about some of the common misconceptions around like how diabetes, forms, and actually it's more of usually like a saturated fat problem than it is anything to do with carbohydrates, and how those things kind of end up getting conflated, and you have these wacky claims about how, oatmeal is killing you or is wrecking your health and those sort of things. And you had touched on saturated fat earlier when you were mentioning your partner like has maybe some like familial hypocholesterolemia. I hope I
Hyper.
said that right. It's
Close enough.
yeah. Basically like individuals who are prone to just having higher cholesterol, and like you were saying, they have to be more sensitive or more aware of their sources. And even on a vegan diet, even on a plant-based diet, even on, even if you're eating primarily a, whole food plant-based diet, you could still end up having a couple, products that are maybe higher, like maybe you used a little bit of plant butter here and there, or maybe you cook with some, coconut milk or something, and you could end up getting a little bit more of those saturated plant fats, often like the tropical fats. And I'm just wondering how can somebody know if they need to be somebody who watches that more carefully? Like, can they do kind of an N of one, observation on themselves where they get their blood work, they try to like reduce it for a certain number of months, see if the, it improves at all, or, see if it gets any better. Like how concerned or how careful should we pay attention to, our saturated fat intake if we're already eating a plant-based diet?
Yeah, first I'd say consult your doctor about health advice. But yeah, I mean, it's a cholesterol panel is a super routine test. And so you can do that. If you want to get more advanced, you can get one of these genetic tests, which I did a while back. And I could see it was like I was lower risk for cholesterol genes as well. But yeah, it's like there are people who message me, and this is actually one of the messages I get more often than not. It's like, hey, I'm vegan and my cholesterol still is high. And it's usually coconut oil getting it sneaking in there. Coconut cream you mentioned, which is good because if you turn around a coconut cream can, it's like, gosh, it's like 20 grams of saturated fat or something in there, or maybe more for the whole can. And so obviously you can track it. You can just keep tracking your cholesterol and just see, and becoming aware of these things that have covert saturated fat. And because the thing is, humans love saturated fat. They love the texture of it. Like the reason people love ice cream and they love gelato especially. The reason that gelato is better than like low fat Greek yogurt or something like frozen yogurt is because of the saturated fat. Your body's like, wow, this is so calorically dense, and like the texture of it as well has like a richness because it's solid at room temperature. That's unfortunate because we end up trying to put all of these saturated fat sources in, peanut butter unfortunately has a bit more saturated fat than other nut butters. So that's one that some people can end up slamming it in accidentally. Or like someone might just be going, oh, I love going and getting like curry at the Thai restaurant. And it's like, well, you might be eating like 15 grams of saturated fat, unfortunately, in that coconut curry, which sucks for some people who are going to respond to it. And then thankfully, coconut oil, for example, just to keep our heads level. It was some randomized trials comparing coconut oil to butter. Coconut oil didn't raise LDL as much as butter, so it's the different types of saturated fats like palmitic and all that stuff. But if you're not careful, you can get some of these in there. Olive
Quick
oil. I'll let you
question.
talk in a second. But yeah, olive oil has.
What about I've read some things about stearic acid in like chocolate being kind of neutral
Mm.
in terms of I don't know. I don't know about that. What do you
I
think
mean, the
about that?
amount is probably really, really low. I mean, it depends though, because different types of chocolate have different cocoa butter content. And so if
Hmm.
you have a really high cocoa butter content and then you're getting a lot, like probably not. Yeah, there's different saturated fats literally have different, like some of them don't raise LDL really much. And then some of them raise it way more. And I need to look at the chart before I make any direct claims of like which one's raised by what percentage. But yeah, it's very clear that there's a difference. And then stearic acid might not be doing horrible. Although stearic acid, yeah, that's one I think that's not quite as bad. Although that is also in animal products. So who knows? And then it's also
Yeah,
like you could argue that even if vegans have slightly higher LDL, that they're going to have higher antioxidant capacity, and then that oxidant is less likely to oxidize and do damage. But then it's like, look, the lower the better, because there's a time when somebody's sick or somebody's not eating as well or somebody's sleep deprived for extended period of
hmm,
time or they're just aging where the oxidation starts creeping in. And that's why these keto carnivore people are also delusional in that it's like, oh, I'm a lean mass hyperresponder, but I'm only 28 or 25 and I don't have like plaque yet, or my coronary calcium score isn't high yet. And so I'm just going to keep doing this indefinitely. And it's like, dude, you're going to hit like 50 and your C-reactive protein or whatever might go up. Your aging, inflammation, like inflammation and aging are like the same thing once you get to a certain point. And unfortunately, at least the risk of it happening. And so like that's going to oxidize the LDL. And then from there, it's going to be like they lit a fire and it's just like they're just going to immediately
that's the
get
problem that
caught in.
these health issues are so latent that it's like people can feel great doing the exact wrong things and then just be like,
Hmm.
"Yep, this is me now," and then you solidify that more and more as years go
Yeah.
on. Oof.
That's why I always mention the French guy that ate a plane, because it's like
Mm,
he literally just like ground up the metal from an entire plane and just like slowly ate it, and like he didn't get
what?
diabetes, like he didn't get heavy metal poisoning, like he survived, but it was like that doesn't mean we should all just become planivores and like it's gonna have negative health effects. So yeah,
I
people
mean,
just
even
I
want
if
to
you
thought
look
maybe
at
you misspoke. I was like, "What? You ate a
no.
plane?"
It's a whole new
My
meaning
God.
to the like your food's coming, the little jet plane.
It's it's an interesting point that you're talking about, like, people will say, "Oh, well, I feel healthy," or, "I seemingly am healthy for, doing these things," but, there's a compounding effect, like, I'm thinking about the world that we're in, like fitness and bodybuilders, and oftentimes people look at them and they think, "Well, these people look super ripped, they look super jacked, they must be healthy." One thing is, a lot of these people are taking some sort of, performance enhancing drug often. If they're in the fitness industry, they have a huge platform, the incentive is just a lot higher. But secondly, even if they aren't, I've seen it many times where it's like, okay, I was, slamming just like tons of animal products for decades in order for me to, achieve this physique or whatever it is. But then later down the line, they inevitably end up having health problems. They have to switch, what they're eating, or they kind of come to, they have their come to Jesus moment, so to speak. Or it's like, oh, actually, even though I thought I wasn't doing harm all these years, I was. And I think it's just, a good reminder that, hey, we have tons of plant-based and vegan athletes these days who are crushing it and, hitting, winning competitions, breaking records, and you don't have to, consume a bunch of animal products in order to be successful in your sport or in your athletic endeavor. And you can even make the case sometimes that there are benefits of, eating a plant-based or vegan diet when you look at these studies that compare, an omnivorous diet versus a vegan diet in the strength and, power outcomes. They tend to be, pretty equivalent. So if you can take that, but then you can also think about outside of the health benefits, maybe you're reducing, inflammation that can help you recover faster, and you can, push more volume and adapt and grow better. Like I think there's a lot of different ways where we could say, actually, this might end up being a benefit.
Yeah, for sure. And that was my most recent video was on what is that guy's channel? He's like 2.5 million. Was it Brandon William? Crap, I forgot his name because I just rushed that video so hard. But I was just reacting to that strength competition he had, which was 6 vegans versus 6 meat eaters. And the guy, who's like a calisthenics
Yeah.
guy, is on. Yeah, he's on the meat eating team. He's trying to win. He's stacking his team so he'll win. And they had 6 competitions, 6 little categories, challenges, and the vegans won 4 out of 6, which was hilarious because these guys, like I said in the video, like these guys on the other side are slamming down meat so much to be strong. And these people come in who are eating no meat and, they win in the arm wrestle. And this guy's overhead pressing, the vegan's overhead pressing more than the non-vegan guy. And they're choosing the strongest people for each category. And then even the category that they won. So like if you watch the video, the first one is deadlift. And there's this guy who's got probably 100 pounds on the vegan and like a foot of height on the vegan guy. And he's using straps, which I mentioned from in the video that we have studies showing 10 to 20% extra weight lifting capacity with straps for the deadlift specifically. The vegan guy's not doing straps, and then he loses by 40 pounds. The vegan guy loses by 40 pounds. So like even the one that they lost, like you could argue was completely unfair and like stacked. So like, I don't know, like
I
they
can't
did
believe I
great.
didn't watch
And,
it. Yeah, I didn't watch it, but
watch
you're
it.
so right about the lifting straps. Because, I mean, one of the people on the like Ben's hat right there, Vegan Strong. Like a lot of those people, or was it just Alice's coach? I forget his name. That was on in that video,
Grady,
Ben.
Vegan Hercules.
Yeah. So he won the like grip holding thing because I saw him posting it on social media, which was like even just that, dude. My heart was like thumping. I don't know why, but I was like, dude, these vegans
150
better
pounds
crush
on each
these
arm
vegans.
spread.
Yeah.
I thought I joked
oh
him in the video. I'm like, he's envisioning like pigs in gas chambers right now.
Yeah.
But I think he was legitimately that much stronger because that guy, the meat eater guy, only lasted like 38 seconds or something. And he was gone to like 45. And it was like, do I need to stop? And like, yeah, you might as well just stop because like you won. All right, I'm going to make sure I got this guy's name right.
He's a beast.
Brandon William.
Is that the keto guy? Wait, I think I saw him.
It might be. Yeah, Brandon William. I got his name right. Good. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, he got 2.5 million followers. And yeah. He won the calisthenics competition. So they had like one where they had to do a bunch of like muscle ups and then like little dips on the top of the bar and stuff. And he won. That was one of the other ones where the meat team won by like 10. But then I'm like, let's get somebody like Frank Medrano in there, who is, I'm like 99% sure is still vegan. I mentioned him in the video. And he's just like not even a human when he gets on the bars. He's just like, can just defy gravity. It's crazy. So I'm sure he would crush. But anyway. Yeah.
I wanted to touch back on what we were talking about with kind of individual foods to a certain extent. So we were talking about these foods might be, raise your LDL or raise your cholesterol, but there will also be studies where they look at a particular food and like, okay, we we split the people into two groups. We gave this person, this group a placebo, and we gave this group the treatment, or whatever that might be. And that might be a food, something in, capsule form, a supplement, when they see increases or, improvements in certain markers. And I think this is a pretty popular idea, like the idea of like there being superfoods or foods that that are like, really impactful on our health. I'm just curious, as a science communicator, how do we kind of look at these individual studies telling us about certain foods? Like, is it kind of an indication of like this general pattern is a good way, and these are some little things, little tweaks that we can include here or there? Like, how should we think about these kind of studies?
It's hard because it depends on the food. And I think sometimes it's like, if there's one little healthy food that can get somebody excited about eating healthy, it's like whatever. If someone really thinks that acai berries are going to like turn their health around, like go for it, and then all of a sudden they're making more smoothies and they're eating more healthy food. And that's good. Another one that I think is funny, which you kind of hit the nail on the head again there, is the whole fresh milled flour movement. You have these people who are eating like a standard American diet, and this woman is out there saying, hey, buy my mills and fresh mill your flour and it's going to make you so much healthier. And then you have these people who are like, I've had freaking ulcerative colitis my whole life, and then or forever, and now I'm eating whole milled flour or fresh milled flour and it's gone. Or like, my husband had diabetes and high cholesterol and now that's gone, now that we eat it like 3 times a day. And it's like, what they're doing is they're actually introducing a whole plant food into their diet, for like a large enough of a portion of their diet that it's having a health effect. Like, they're probably eating 15 grams of fiber per day. That's the average before they're doing that. And then they're just adding a whole grain, and it's like a miracle food because they're actually introducing a whole plant food for like the first time in like a considerable amount. And they're just making like whole grain bread or like little like whole grain pancakes and like muffins and stuff. And they're like, oh my God, my life has changed. But they do say it tastes a lot better too than normal bread. So yeah, I made it really quickly and I did it wrong, and I made like a brick, and it still tasted good. I need to do it again because I did like I need to do a video on it, because I did the video on these people and their claims and what's actually probably
is it like is it like an actual workout to do it too? I was like, I wonder if that doing the thing would actually benefit their health too. They're like, I have to do this
That's
3 times a
funny.
day
Yeah,
now.
maybe the
You
bread,
know?
like making the bread. But no, what it is, they're just throwing the mill. They buy a mill and they just put these wheat berries, the like whole wheat grain, into the mill, and they get the whole grain, and then they like make bread or whatever. Yeah, maybe the kneading is like getting enough exercise and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's this woman who's like, yeah, I had severe colitis and like tried every possible thing for years, and then I just ate fresh milled flour products and it's gone. And I was like, oh, that's, you mean you had fiber for the first time? And you're like, I don't know. It's not that simple with ulcerative colitis. Obviously, people can eat fiber and still have it. But in her case, like maybe that was just the first time she was excited enough about something from some crazy claims about a food that she just ended up eating. Yeah. So it depends. But then you have the whole like bacon is a superfood stuff. So like that term is hijacked as well. And so you gotta be a little bit careful. Just follow the science.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you're kind of getting at this idea of like that a lot of these things are like replacement or displacement effects. Like, okay, you were introducing this food and it can be about what we're eating, but it can also be about what we're then taking out of our diets or what we're
That's true.
replacing. Like oftentimes when we're talking to clients, we might not say like cut these things out. We might just say like, hey, can you try to eat a portion of vegetables at each meal? Because by default, they're going to be you're probably not as hungry, and they might just be, taking out some of the, wherever they're coming from, they might be taking out some of the meat that they've been eating, or they might be switching some more, processed carbohydrate for, whole plant foods. And that in and of itself is having an impact. Or like you said, like they're getting excited and now they're making these other changes. Maybe they've also started exercising. So it can be kind of, I guess, hard to parse out exactly what's going on there. I feel like that's sometimes a critique as well. From what I've seen, it's like this, when it's like a vegan group versus like a non-vegan group, it's like a healthy user bias or something like that, where it's like, oh, the vegans are maybe doing all these other things as well that are healthy, but I think you can control for that. So I'm, you would probably know better than me on that.
Yeah, it depends on the study. Some of the studies don't. A lot of them do, and a lot of them try. And a lot of them, ironically, what I've been finding with an issue is that we're overcorrecting for vegans a lot of the times. Like the vegans are being over adjusted. So it's like, vegans, like they have lower cholesterol, but that's separate. We're just going to adjust that away. We're actually going to just crank up the disease rate that we're looking at because the vegans have lower cholesterol, and that's just something they have. And it's like, no, that's actually causal because of their diet. And so that can be
Yeah.
really frustrating. And you're absolutely right. Like the person who's eating 3 big servings of fresh milled flour a day is not going to be eating as much red and processed meat as well. They're just not going to be able to fit it. And so that's, of course, going to have a huge effect on ulcerative colitis. Like they're going to have less like nitroso compounds forming in their colon. And like that could have been what did it right there, like preservatives, sulfites and stuff. And so, yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
observation.
Makes a lot of sense. I think one thing I wanted to kind of interject with, because it was kind of reminding me of an earlier topic we were talking about, which is that like these sensationalized kind of topics that people will come and bring up, like we can learn something from those people, right? Like with our content, we could say like, if we kind of sensationalize like good advice and we say like, what, this one swap changed my whole life, and it's like a very simple like, hey, you eat oatmeal for breakfast now or whatever type of thing, like it can't. And then we've also zoom out and talk about the science about why that matters, so that like, because I think really education is empowering. It's like it prevents them from coming back and being fooled by counterclaims and things, right? So it's like we can use the same tactics to get in the door and be like, hey, this magic pill is going to change your whole life. Like, and then we kind of slip in some education in there. I feel like that is what gets people out of that loop of like constantly being like susceptible to that bombardment of like, hey, you're not doing things right, change your whole life. You know what I mean? And like having
Yeah.
that layer and layer there. So
Definitely doesn't
I
hurt
don't know.
to be enthusiastic when just like having health message, which
Yeah.
is huge. And like I've tried to do that a little bit. Sometimes it works. Like I did like, oh, this is nature's Ozempic video, because nature's Ozempic was also like a trending term. And it was just
Yeah.
talking about the studies of how whole carbohydrates, like for example, that fresh milled flour would
Mhm.
actually have similar effects on GLP-1 as GLP-1 drugs. And so it's like, there's things like that. And yeah, hopefully you can get that type of person to listen to the science too, and not just like click off immediately when it didn't tell them to just snort bacon grease for disease reversal.
Man, I want to meet the person who could do that and like be excited about it. That's pretty hardcore.
Or like the guy, oh my gosh. I mean, though these people eat crazy stuff. Like there's the like rotten meat guy that I've seen here and there. He like tries to eat a jar of rotten meat because he thinks it's going to be like a probiotic, and he just gets sick every time.
My
And it's like,
God.
dude, what are you doing? So yeah, people will try. There's definitely a big, now that I put bacon grease snorting out into the atmosphere,
Yeah.
into the ether, somebody's going to
somebody's
Yeah,
do
we
it.
got to be careful what we joke about, man. People will do
Yeah.
it.
This is how health trends start.
Thankfully, I like to believe our listeners are a little bit more clued in, and hopefully, listeners, please, none of you do that. I don't know.
You don't have like
hate.
You don't have like hate subscribers that might be
I'm
eating
sure
the bacon
I don't
grease.
big enough yet.
On our main channel, I'm sure we probably get more of those. On the podcast channel, it tends to be people who are kind of already about the messaging that we have. So, maybe that's a sign that we've made it when we start getting some of those people that
We're like, yeah,
haters.
somebody snorted the bacon grease.
Yeah,
We
someone
made
snorted
it.
the bacon grease. Yeah. That's how you know, man.
As
That's
we kind
hilarious.
of close things out today, Mike, thank you again for your time and for coming on today. I would love to maybe just leave listeners with, I guess, one last piece of perhaps advice from yourself. If they're trying to be more literate consumers of content, of science information, how can somebody better understand who is really just trying to maybe take advantage of some fears or anxieties that I have, and maybe get some sort of financial gain out of that, versus who is actually out there trying to provide information like yourself to kind of just help on these actionable things that we can do to improve our health and our longevity? How can what's maybe a useful metric for people to, obviously it's not so simple as one piece of advice, but to maybe get more of it right and listen to people who are a little bit actually more evidence-based versus people who appear to be?
Yeah, that's really hard and it's super nuanced. A couple little tips. One is like, is what they're promoting also backed by like giant mega corporations that lobby a ton of money? Like, is that something that happens? Whether, and people believe it with the sugar industry, like, oh, that's so easy to believe. But then for some reason, they don't believe it with like the meat and dairy industry, even though it's like a massive multi-billion-dollar industry that has a huge motivation to be paying influencers to do that. But it's also worth mentioning that influencers need to also support themselves. So selling something or anything alone is not enough for something to just be factually incorrect. Because if that was the case, then every claim would be factually, like every angle, whether it's plant-based or keto or whatever, like everyone is probably writing a little ebook to try to sell it or doing some little coaching or something. And so you can't just say, oh, they're selling something, therefore they're wrong. But I think, is the person citing some science? There's people with credentials that are worth listening to and not worth listening to also, which is really hard. You'll have your carnivore doctor saying cholesterol doesn't matter at all. Here's someone's cholesterol. Here's steak and butter gal's cholesterol, which is like through the roof, but that's totally fine. So you have to be careful, and generally it helps to follow the consensus. But then it's like, is the consensus always right? I don't know, man. It's so hard. But yeah, I mean, there's like, for example, I'm not like a huge like, oh my God, use AI all the time. AI, I think, can be very dangerous to use inappropriately too. And there's environmental problems, but like consensus AI, if you just type in like, what is the current literature's view on whether or not high cholesterol is bad? And then you'll get like a bar of like 75 or 80% say high cholesterol is a bad thing. And obviously that's not listening to an influencer. You have to go and do that yourself. But like, try and actually figure out if there's science behind what someone's saying. Like just do some spot checks. Like, does this match up with the science or not? And yeah, sometimes it's hard because there's industry funded science as well. There's meta-analyses paid for by the dairy industry. So there's no easy answer, man. You hit me with the hard one at the end there.
I did.
Yeah.
But if anything,
best.
that's more incentive for people to go check out your videos and do a little bit more deep dive into some of the topics you cover, so that you can give the nuance and can give the elaboration. So, anything you want to say before we close things out?
I don't know if you heard you, but I was going to say that everybody is wrong about something too. Like, I'm wrong about stuff. If somebody's telling you that they're right about everything, that is a major red flag. Okay, there you go.
That's very true. Sawyer, closing thoughts?
No, man, I just really appreciate you, Mike, for coming on. Been a long time coming, because I just have always appreciated your content and really value what you have to say on a lot of topics, and just makes me think so much more deeply about certain things that I made assumptions about. And I think it would have been a lot easier along my vegan journey to get led astray if not for a lot of your content. So I just want to thank you for coming on, and thank you for doing what you do.
Appreciate that. Well, happy to keep you on the straight and narrow, the science zone, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys too. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, keep paying attention to the science, even if it's boring. Listen to the science here and there.
There
And
we
Yeah, the
go.
science is boring, but
and
we're
get buff.
sexy, so that's how we get it across.
There
Right?
you go. There you go. Be sexy. Be a sexy vegan. A recent study just came out by Matthew Nagra looking at all the ways that vegans are hotter. So maybe
I
we'll do
saw
a video
that.
on that.
Nice.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That's
That'd be
so
awesome.
cool.
Definitely do a video on that. Well, thank you again, Mike, for coming on. We'll link all your stuff down in the description below. And if you guys enjoyed listening, please be sure to leave a comment and let Mike know that you found some value out of this podcast. Definitely go check out his YouTube channel, and we'll catch everyone in the next episode. Thanks, guys.